So, hello everybody, and I'll begin with a discourse, and then we can meditate together for a while and finish with a question and answer session. What time do you want to finish? 3. Okay. Okay, so I'll try and speak more quickly and get more words into the time allotted. So maybe today say a few words on the subject of attachment and non-attachment and being detached and semi-detached. Because I think it's a central issue in Buddhist teaching, and one that can be somewhat confusing and even off-putting. One of the most important guiding principles of the Buddhist teaching is that the extent to which you see something clearly is the extent to which you abandon attachment to it. So non-attachment, and I will explain this, what I mean by that term in a little bit, is the function of, or is the result of clear vision, clear understanding. So it's not like a Buddhist stance, saying, I'm Buddhist, I've got to be non-attached. That's what Buddhists do. But it is more the natural, automatic result from applying an interest and a focus on one's own experience and what's actually going on in our life and in our mind and body. So moving away from the idea of religious teachings as dogmas to be believed in and to provide a focus of comfort and inner strength in times of difficulty, looking at religious teachings as tools to enable us to see more clearly. The happiness, similarly, very vague term and one which is explained and understood in many different ways. The Buddha teaches us that the more clearly we understand the way things are, the more happy we become. So this is an important teaching to emphasize as a counterweight to the emphasis on, or the perceived emphasis on suffering or dukkha. And the paradox here being that it is the happy mind which has the inner strength and integrity and courage to be able to look at the more difficult sides of life without being swept away. Now, the effort to look more clearly, the first important conditioning factor is the desire to do so. The commitment to vision and investigation of our life. And that means willingness to put down ideas and philosophies and preconceived ideas about who we are and what's what, and being able to look and see whatever might appear. And some of the things that we see will be perhaps uplifting, and others may be quite disheartening, dispiriting. But we need to develop this patient and equanimous consciousness, one that is willing to learn from experience, whatever it might be, whatever the emotional impact of it might be when first perceived. Of course, when we begin to practice, we find it very difficult. The traditional simile is of going against the stream, countering the stream of habit and all the forces that pull us outside and to turn us away from an observation and a presence to our actual experience. And as the society in which we live and love becomes more and more complex, then the ease and the convenience with which we can escape ourselves becomes ever more powerful. The practice of meditation is a clear declaration to ourselves that we're sincere about this, to the extent that we're willing to make sacrifices of time that we might spend otherwise in enjoyments that afford more immediate gratification. And we are willing to bear with the difficulties and frustrations of developing this presence of mind and wakefulness, inner alertness, which is the heart of the Buddhist method. I often characterize the Buddha's teachings as the supreme education system. It's an education, a training of every aspect of our life. And the classroom, or the forum, or the place in which this education takes place most effectively is the present moment. So we're not elevating the present moment into this kind of mystic quality and just be in the present moment and everything will be all right. But recognizing that the only place in which we can really penetrate the truth of things is in the present moment. When we're out of the present moment, we are sleeping, we are dreaming, we are relying upon memory, imagination as a crutch for consciousness. So in meditation we're learning how to stand alone, free of crutches and free of distractions. And that is a huge challenge. Now, one of the things we can observe very very easily is that we are addicted to pleasant feeling. And we don't have to feel guilty about that or bad about that. It's just a normal part of the human condition. But we can perform kind of judo on this instinct or habit by simply ensuring that we generate feelings of happiness and pleasure associated with our meditation practice. So some things give rise to pleasant sensations immediately without any kind of mediation. Many sensual pleasures will be in this category. But other more refined pleasures are enriched by education. I'm sure many of you will have the experience of perhaps as a young person going to a museum or an art gallery, perhaps on a school trip, and just sort of walking past all the pictures and sort of generally recognizing them as rather beautiful or not so beautiful, but not perhaps particularly moved or impressed. And then on another occasion, having someone who really understands art explaining just why this is considered a masterpiece and pointing out the use of color, the juxtaposition of image, and so on and so forth. And we're looking at the same picture with the same eyes, but now our appreciation and our enjoyment of that picture is enhanced many, many times. So this is an example of a visual form which, without education, arouses perhaps quite a mild pleasure, and with increased knowledge and understanding, a much more intense pleasure. So the influence of more information and certain focused and relevant thought processes can enhance the pleasure of experience or detract from it if we dwell unwisely on the same phenomena. But in terms of meditation, we take a bland object, for instance, the breath, because we want to wake up to our life, and the area of life which we neglect and overlook is that area of life which doesn't immediately give rise to strong feelings of pleasure or pain. And it's easy to be awake. You know when you're really blissed out, you know when you're really in pain. But the majority of our life is lived in the hinterland between extreme pleasure and pain. And that's the area in which we just tend to get caught up and live in a kind of a semi-hypnotic state, a very superficial and heedless state of mind. So in order to reverse that process, or to educate ourselves to be alive and present throughout the whole of our experience, we particularly focus on an object which expresses very well that bland, in-between kind of area of life, which is the breath. But because it is, as I say, something which does not hold us through its own characteristics, it's not attractive in that way, we have to put forth effort. So meditation is putting forth of effort. And indeed in Thai, the most common idiom for meditation used in the forest monasteries in which I trained is putting forth effort. So after an evening meeting and service and discourse in the Dhamma hall at Wat Pah Pong, Ajahn Jayasaro said, well, that's enough for this evening. Now just go back to your huts and put forth effort in your practice. So that's a very different attitude to meditation. Seeing it's something that you're putting effort into. It's an expression of effort. It's a kind of work. But that doesn't mean to say, and it should not mean it's a kind of a dreary, a drudge. It's kind of hard. It's something you have to force yourself to do. But by reflecting on the value of meditation, reflecting on the experience of freedom from defilement, even temporarily, through generating those kinds of reflections based upon experience in meditation, we start to enjoy it, even when, or even during that period where the mind is not particularly calm. It's not that if we start to look on meditation in the way that many people look on their daily life as sort of a drudge work to get through in order to sometime in the future have some pleasant experience, whether it's a holiday or a particular level of wealth or prestige, or even if it's retirement after you finish the work life, then it's precisely that kind of attitude that we are countering in meditation. In putting the effort, our interest is in quality of effort, rather than some result, which we might call peace or enlightenment or jhana or jnana or whatever. If we're practicing in order to achieve some kind of particular state, then we're going to miss the point of meditation. I am not, though, advocating this kind of goalless meditation. Certainly you need a goal, and it needs to be clearly defined. But the analogy here is of swimming across a lake to an island, let's say in the middle of the lake. Now, if you were to swim towards an island, then if you had your head above the water and you're constantly looking at the island and trying to see exactly what it's like and how much longer is it going to take me to get there, and I've come such a short distance and this is so hard, it would be a very inefficient and unwise way of swimming towards the island. Whereas the more intelligent strategy would be to notice where the island is and then put your effort into the swimming stroke, to swim as best you can, the best stroke. And every now and again, you just bob your head up and just to check whether or not the island is still in front of you. So it's not that you forget the island altogether, but it's not something that you have to be obsessed with and keep looking at the whole time, because it doesn't help you to get to the island any quicker. In fact, subjectively, it may seem to take a much longer, and will probably have a detrimental effect on the quality of your swimming stroke. So this is how we approach meditation. And the idea of meditation here is that we're modeling certain kinds of life skills and attitudes to our life in general in this very kind of artificial environment of sitting with our legs crossed and our eyes closed. And we're learning to deal with and to gradually work with these habits we have of doing one thing in order to get something else, or trying to do more than one thing at a time, or trying to squeeze the maximum pleasure out of every pleasant object and to do everything we can to avoid the unpleasant. And we have accumulated so many unwise habits in our life, none of which are life-threatening, and of which are so much the norm in the society in which we live that they're almost invisible. And they only really become visible, and the fault in them, the drawback in them, is seen when we go completely counter to the whole worldly stream and try to be present and aware with one single in-breath and one single out-breath. And we may shout out in frustration, I can't do it. And then if that's the case, and mostly it is, then that's a really sobering reflection, isn't it? Why is it that we can't just be present to our own life? Why can't we be with ourselves right now without mediation, without distractions, without entertainment, without enjoyment, without communication? Why is it that the basic human condition of being alive right now is such a formidable and difficult thing for us? And surely, it's an indication that there's something seriously misguided and wrong about the way that we've been using our minds and the way that we've been living our life. So this effort to be present enables us to use my analogy from just now, enter into the classroom and free of philosophies and theories and religious teachings, just what's going on. And if we don't have too many expectations about what we're going to see or what we want to learn, then we learn very freely, very easily. I found over the years that there are many wonderful phrases in the English language, which, when I rarely speak English these days. This is very, I give talks like this maybe 3 or 4 times a year usually in Thailand. So, but when I go back to the West, I'm speaking English all the time, and every now and again I realize what a wonderful word that is, or what a wonderful phrase, and I never really thought about it before. And most recently, there's a couple of phrases that came up. When we say something, it occurred to me that, so on and so forth. And there's another phrase that I particularly like, is it dawned upon me that something or other. And those 2 words, I would say, are very expressive of the kinds of experience you have in meditation, where this idea we have assumed of this person, me, who thinks, who feels, who likes, who dislikes, who's happy or unhappy, is a very nebulous thing. And that what happens when we look very clearly is that things occur in the mind, and then the sense of being the one who thought arises subsequent to the thought. Now that can seem like a really abstruse philosophical position. The thought arises before the thinker, but I would suggest that it's an insight that comes in, and can come in a very early stage of meditation, just short period of relative calm. You just realize something just arises in your mind, something dawns upon your mind, and then that sense of ownership arises. I mean, the gap between the thought and the feeling and the sense of being the thinker or the feeler may be very short, and your ability to recognize it will become refined over time. but it is something that you can see, and teachings which had formerly seemed very profound and difficult, like anatta, become to seem really quite kind of normal and common sense. So through the effort to maintain this alertness, awakeness, awareness of the breath, bringing one alive into the present moment, then things arise, and having arisen, they pass away. In the effort to maintain awareness of the object, the mind drifts off, and then there is a moment where it's not drifting anymore. And what you say, oh, what am I thinking about? Or I've lost it. And that's a moment of awakening. So the heart of Buddhism is the awakening, the experience of awakening. And the word Buddha itself means the awakened one. So at this very early level, the very early stage of, we're experiencing just a taste of what that means to awaken. It's often we tend to have quite a negative view of this. I meditated and my mind was wandering and I brought it back and then it wandered off again, and it was like as if that was a waste of time. It's far, far from a waste of time. First of all, that moment where you become aware that you're no longer with your breath, that is a moment of awakening. You've woken up to what's happening right now. And then your willingness and your ability to put that down, put that thought down, the pleasure of that thought, that memory, that imaginary vision or whatever it might be, and to return to the breath, that is a strengthening of the mind. It is comparable to a push-up or a press-up in the gym. Every time you do that, you're strengthening the mindfulness muscle, and you're creating the condition for you to be able to do that in the future, and to do it more swiftly and more effectively. So the experience in meditation then is one which Ajahn Chah memorably compared to water dripping from a tap. And to begin with, you have like drip, 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 and the drips here being the moments of mindfulness, and the gap between the drip, meaning the period of distraction. But then as you steadily put forth effort, then the drips become more frequent. It's drip, 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 until hopefully you have a stream of water. And that stream of water is called samadhi. Now, the mind which has developed the samadhi, that inner stability and calm and brightness and happiness, contentment, is a mind which is not pulled towards pleasant experience and doesn't push away, doesn't feel threatened by unpleasant experience. And for that reason, it is the stable base for insight, more profound level of wisdom. And when we are able to develop this kind of samadhi, the sati, it becomes stable, this arising and passing away of phenomena becomes more and more clear. And we begin to see things in terms of process more and more, and less in terms of content. So this is something to observe. When the mind lacks mindfulness and clarity and sharpness and alertness, we're moving from content to content, and our minds are going up and down according to the emotional impact of those contacts. When the mind is stabilized and clear and bright, then we're aware of phenomena. It's not that there's no longer any awareness of them, except for very deep states of concentration. But now the process nature of phenomena becomes much more apparent, and the way in which phenomena arise and pass away according to causes and conditions. And when we see that, then the sense of ownership in emotions and thoughts and feelings is much reduced, and the recognition that even if we were to experience a certain pleasant feeling for a longer spell of time, that it would be just that much, nothing to be dismissed or to be treated with disrespect or contempt, but pleasant feeling is just that. It's just pleasant feeling. It's no more than that. Pleasant feeling can never really answer our deepest needs as human beings. And unpleasant feeling and pain is just that. It's just pain. It's just unpleasant feeling. We don't want, it doesn't to say we're completely indifferent towards it or quite happy or interested in experiencing more and more unpleasantness. But it's nothing more than that. And an analogy that I came up with is like, if you're not, Thailand's probably not such a good example, but if you can imagine a sort of a colder country, and outside it's very cold and the wind's blowing and it's raining and it's totally miserable, and you're in this cozy room by the side of a fire and it's feeling really nice and warm, and you look out the windows and you can see the rain and you can hear the wind, but the rain and the wind, it doesn't come into the room in which you are. So there is an awareness of it, but one's not be affected by it. And this is the kind of detachment that one begins to feel. It's attachment not from adopting a particular kind of Buddhist attitude to phenomena. It's all suffering, or it's all this, but it's more like an exclamation that arises in the mind which sees things as they are. So it's always putting the experience first, and then the theory to try to articulate the theory, rather than having the theory first and then trying to sort of massage experience to fit in within those conceptual boundaries. So when we see more clearly the way things arise and pass away according to causes and conditions, then certain other insights will come. For instance, that the idea that you can control things, the idea of control as a strategy by which to order your life, it doesn't work, because the things that may be controlled are relatively minor in number. There's a huge web of causes and conditions influencing any situation, and it's just not possible to control all of the conditions that you would need to control in order to provide a sense of safety and security. So you're always going to be condemned to a sense of insecurity and tension and anxiety when you try to control things which can't be controlled. but through recognizing the complex nature of phenomena, process nature of phenomena, and having a clear understanding of how things affect each other, then you may exert effort to govern those aspects of situations which are amenable to control. So you're not, in other words, tiring yourself out, becoming frustrated and despairing because you're trying to control things that can't be controlled, but you are recognizing what areas of experience will respond to effort and which won't, and applying effort wisely and economically. So so this will apply in all areas in which generally we attach to things, and seeing the fallacy and to see the lack of clear awareness and alertness and wisdom which underlies that. For instance, the attachment to physical body and attachment to the image of the body that we see in the mirror every day. And people say, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I don't like my nose, I don't like this, I wish I was more like that. And how much mental anguish and suffering unnecessarily because the idea I am my body, I am defined by my physical appearance. So we turn that into a question. Say, in what ways am I my body? You know, what is this body? What is it really all about? In what way can I say that I'm an owner of my body? And in what ways would that be incorrect? There's Ajahn Jayasaro. He would just speak it very simply, say, if this was really your body, then you could just tell it, don't get old, don't get sick, don't die. It would, in other words, it would do what you told it to do, but it doesn't. And that's such an obvious and basic truth of life, but it's not one that we really have digested and really integrated into the way we treat our bodies. So we have this knowledge, sort of everyday knowledge that we would never quarrel with. Yes, of course, we get old, we get sick, we die, and we can't do anything about that. But at the same time, we act as if we think as if we feel as if it was our body. I mean, why is it that we find physical illness so depressing? Why is illness mentally depressing? Why does it have to be mentally depressing? Why do we feel so down when we get ill? And so this is something that we can really see. But what is the relationship between how we view our body and our sense of ownership of body, and the distress and the fear and the depression that we feel when something goes wrong with it, and the identification with feelings, and again this idea that strong feelings are somehow more real than mild feelings. Certainly you have to be passionate about something and be passionately in favor of something or passionately against something. And somehow that's how you define yourself as an individual in the particular pattern of passions that you have. And somehow being passionate is a sign that you're someone to be trusted, or that you're someone who's authentic and real. But why is a strong emotion for or against something any more real than feeling equanimous about it? So for me, I feel Buddhism is giving us the tools to ask questions about our life rather than spoon-feeding us answers. I'm saying, well, to be able to really ask these kinds of questions not in a sort of intellectual way, but in an existential way, like really asking about our experience. You have to be able to train the mind, have a certain inner discipline and inner focus and observation of what is going on. And say, and we can notice all kinds of things. For instance, really simple the relationship between excitement and boredom. Most people like to be excited and go to movies and all kinds of spend money and to go to places and where they feel excited, where they feel the adrenaline running and something happening. So something happening is always preferable to nothing happening. Well, why is that anyway? But if we look at the way in which excitement and the attachment to excitement alternates with boredom, then we begin to see that rather being two completely opposing qualities, that they're intimately related. The extent to which we identify with excitement is the extent to which we are threatened by and find ourselves overwhelmed by boredom. So what happens when you get really bored? Well, you should try to find something exciting so that you can escape from boredom, but you can't be excited for very long. Your body can't stand excitement for very long. Physically, it's tiring. Mentally, it's exhausting. And so after a period of excitement has passed, then you fall into boredom. And so you want to get out of boredom, going back into excitement. And so there's this boredom-excitement cycle. And so the unwise person will just think, well, how can I maximize the exciting experiences in my life and minimize the boring experiences? Whereas I would suggest if you look very clearly, you see that as long as you identify and crave excitement, you'll never be free of boredom. That these two things condition each other. And similarly, praise and blame, another very clear example, that most people enjoy praise and dislike criticism and feel hurt and upset by criticism. But I think if we look, we see the extent to which we indulge in praise conditions the pain and the suffering when we're criticized. And there comes a point to say, well, the only way that I can deal with criticism, fair or unfair, without being completely overpowered by it, is to release my attachment to the pleasures of praise. So and how do you do that? Again, it's not like a decision you make. It comes from seeing very clearly that praise is just praise. It's nothing more, nothing less than that. People praise you. Why do people praise you? Sometimes there may be genuine enthusiasm and appreciation of something. Sometimes they may have some hidden agenda. It may be just they want to get on your good side or be popular with you. They know that if you praise them, then they'll like you more. So when you hear praise, there's this question of, well, what's the intention behind praise? And then, well, how appropriate is the praise? Sometimes we praise far in excess of our merit. Sometimes it's a very reasonable kind of praise. Sometimes the praise is lukewarm and we probably deserve more praise than we receive. So there are all these kinds of variables. And well, praise is just that. It's just part of being in the world. And wherever there's praise and there's jealousy. Some people, if you do something good, then that's what happens. If you do something good and other people know about it, some people will feel it praiseworthy. Some people will feel it worthy of criticism. Others will be completely indifferent. Some people will be jealous. That's the way the world is. And we don't expect anything else. I did this with a good intention. I did it with a pure heart. I had no ulterior motives. And look what I get in reply and response. People are running me down and making all these accusations and feeling very hard done by. And if we say, well, look, this is the way the world is. This is the way the people are. This is the way the human mind is. It's like this, and this is what happens. So don't make such a fuss out of praise, and you won't need to make such a fuss out of criticism. Now, sometimes we're criticized for things worthy of praise. Sometimes we're praised for things worthy of criticism. We're looking all the time and learning. It's like this, isn't it? This is how it is. And this sense that, wisdom and understanding comes when we're able just to look at things for what they are without allowing the mind to grasp onto things and try to, maximize the pleasant, minimize the unpleasant. So there are things that we experience in life. There are things which are pleasant and harmless, pleasant and harmful, unpleasant and harmless, unpleasant and harmful, and being able to distinguish between those is a sign of maturity and wisdom. So the more that we see things arising or passing away according to causes and conditions, we see how incorrect it is, how misguided it is to try to hold on to something tight and to seek to create some kind of fixed identity from things, because we can't hold on to things. Not just that we shouldn't hold on to things, but we can't because of the nature phenomena. So we develop the strength and the clarity of mind to see and to understand. And then we go beyond these dualisms of activity and passivity. And there's this growing sense of time and place, and that in certain situations it's appropriate to be more active. In certain situations it's more appropriate to be passive. Sometimes it's time to speak, sometimes time to listen. And that kind of sensitivity to the optimum response to situations comes to the extent that we let go of these ideas of me and who I am and my position and my status and the respect that's owed to me, or ideas that I'm something special, or I'm nobody special, or I'm hopeless, or I'm intelligent, or I'm stupid, and all those perceptions of ourselves which we hold on to and filter our experience and distort our reception and interpretation of what's going on. So the meditation, I say, is where you put in the hard work. It's like learning the scales of playing musical instrument. It's where you're learning to apply effort to being alert, awake, aware in the present moment, not moving towards things, moving away from things, just allowing things to occur to you. And the extent to which you can do that allows all these kinds of insights just to gradually bubble up into the mind, and as this, certainly in my experience, then there's this growing faith in the teachings of the Buddha coming from experiences arising in practice, and saying, "Oh yes, this is what the Buddha's talking about. Now I understand what that means. I understand what this means, not just as an idea, as a philosophy, but as a lived experience. So I would like to end my talk at this point. Thank you for your patience and attention.